Hi, and welcome to today's webinar at Titus Talent Strategies. We're looking at the heart, the candidate in 3D. We are in a series of webinars, and it's great to have you guys here. We are looking at the whole candidate, the whole person, from an employee or a candidate if you're recruiting and hiring, and understanding all the different components that go into making up an individual. How do you get the perfect fit? What does that really look like? Our company's mission has always been, from our inception back in 2010, to empower companies to make the best attraction, engagement, hiring, and development decisions to meet their organization's people and performance objectives. And that's our passion. It's what drives us, working with companies, helping them with their people. We're not an HR company. We're a talent strategy company, and it's been an absolute privilege of ours to serve companies all across the country and internationally now with their people strategy, whether it be critical hiring, whether it be engaging top performers, whether it be figuring out how to get teams working together, or developing team members and coaching. So this is an interactive webinar and presentation, so please do interact. As for those of you who've been a part of the series, you'll know that you just shoot your question in here and we'll try and get to it. I think last time we didn't get to any of them, so we were jam-packed. But please do write your questions in there and we'll do our best to respond. It is private, so nobody can see your questions, just in case it's a really dumb one. I'm kidding, there are no dumb questions, but we all know that's not true. So, but we will not, we won't humiliate you. If you've got a question that we can answer later, we will get to it. So, cool. So this series, like I said, is the whole person. I'll just kind of break this down for you just so you get an idea of the things that we're covering. The briefcase is really your traditional, what people look at, the resume or your LinkedIn profile, your education, your professional choices and experiences, what that person brings to the table. As you all know, it's what you do with what you have that makes you successful. It's not just the fact that you have them. 10 years of accounting experience doesn't make you a great accountant. It's what do you do with that experience and how do you perform the job? And can you perform the job and will you perform the job? So the briefcase, that's a phenomenal webinar all about finding and identifying top performers and vetting and screening them, helping them be the best version of them in the workplace. And then the next will be the head. This is the way people behave and think when the pressure's on, when the pressure's off, when nobody's looking, how they function on team, how they function in the different team dynamics of your organization, which is really important to understand what's going up here. You need some kind of an assessment for that, which we use. And then the third component here is the heart. The heart is what we're talking about today. How do you understand what's going on here? People talk about culture all the time. Culture this, culture that. Culture is so important, but what do we really mean? Because when you say we have a culture of whatever, just hiring somebody with a great degree or a great GPA or good educational background or 15 years experience in doesn't mean they fit your culture. So how are you defining that? Culture, this big buzzword. I was speaking at a conference in Florida, and there must have been, I don't know, 500 talent acquisition folk out this. And one of the big things with culture, and I'd say, we need to stop hiring for culture. And you could have heard a pin drop. Everyone's thinking, you can't say that. You know, we're all trying to hire for culture, aren't we? Isn't that the new thing we're supposed to be doing? And I was being purposefully antagonistic, but a challenging thought process here, because if you're trying to hire for culture, you better be able to define it and you better be able to measure it for it to be fair, not just fair, but also fair to the people that you're actually bringing onto the organization. If you're hiring them for a culture that they don't really know is defined, there's going to be some problems there. But also if you're passing on candidates who say not a fit, what does that mean? And what's this fit thing you're talking about? So what we began talking about is kind of trying to figure out this whole thing of what do we really mean when we say culture? And I'm going to align this right now with the heart, what's going on in their values. And so our big problem is when we hire for culture, there's no definition to those things for many organizations and many hiring managers. We just hide behind this thing called culture. So getting value alignment is really, really important. So hiring for an undefined culture is a big problem. We need to stop doing that. So if you're saying, oh, we hire for our culture and it's not defined and not measurable, we've got an issue there. Next would be the organizational misalignment on culture, meaning everybody has their own interpretation of what that is. Okay, everybody has their own interpretation of what you mean by that one word that everyone says. You know, if I said passion, that person's a really passionate person. Whoa, everyone has their own interpretation of what that really means, and it's different for everyone. So getting an alignment there on that. And then the other thing is gladiator hiring. You see it all the time. Hiring managers say, thanks a lot for that interview, not a fit. You think, oh, okay, passing on that candidate. And we seem to be okay. Many talent acquisition kind of, okay, well, the hiring manager didn't want them because they said not a fit, and we're just going to move on. What a waste of time if we're actually not finding out what does not a fit mean. And a lot of it comes down to this thing of, oh, I don't think they're a good cultural fit. And we hide behind that as opposed to actually saying what the real issue is. Today, I just want to welcome to I'm not sitting here alone. I'm sitting here with Dante Houston, one of our senior consultants. I've known and worked with Dante over the last 12, 15 years in different capacities. And it's a privilege to have him today. He's had a massive impact on us internally as an organization, and he's had a growing impact on our clients around the country as well, from training, development, from helping them with critical hiring, helping them with big people challenges on a department level, on a global level for their organization, but also on a one-on-one basis. So Dante, it's good to have you here. The reason I want Dante here, he's got some amazing insight, but also great wealth of stories and experiences that he's had when it comes to helping companies with their live values and culture. So Dante, welcome.
Thank you, Jonathan. Very kind introduction. I always like to begin these conversations or discussions about culture by actually sharing a story about how Jonathan and I initially met. I say that the interview of me joining his team has been an interview of well over 10 years, because we initially met at a program that was designed for students who are in high school called Black Achievers. Jonathan was very gracious with his time and helped me prepare those students with interviews, with also preparing resumes as they began their college searches. And so it was his dedication to not only coming and helping those students, but me really figuring out that this was not only a part of who he was as a person, but it would later define one of the core values of the culture of this organization, Titus Talent Strategies, once he founded it. And so I'm very appreciative to be a part of the organization and recognize that, again, that well over 10-year job interview of getting to know he and I throughout our time began by both of us being dedicated to servanthood and both of us having a part of ourselves in that culture of servanthood. So as we start to look at culture, it's culture that will set us apart. It's who we become. It is what we call here at Titus the CCC. We are defining our inspiration. We are gathering inspiration in our ideas, not only from our community. The first C is a part of that. We're gathering our inspiration and our ideas from the companies in which we're serving. And finally, we're gathering ideas from our colleagues. So really wrapping in that CCC aspect of what it is that we do on a daily basis. Now, it's culture that does set us apart, but the key is that culture becomes a part of our values, and they're lived and they are clearly defined. If you don't have those values clearly defined, they become, again, just non-alignments or stories that are a part of an organization that don't really matter to those who are part of the company or those who see the organization outside of the environment in which you're working. We have to, in essence, look at several aspects of, first and foremost, core values being small sets of timeless guiding principles, and secondly, looking at core values that are already existing in your organization. They've just been lost in the day-to-day. So let's first look at some of those things that are core values or small sets of timeless guiding principles. These are things that should already be a part of your hiring process. These are things that should be a part of the individuals who are already working diligently on behalf of your organization. In many instances, those small, timeless guiding principles have been lost and overshadowed by values that are on paper said, but unfortunately are not lived. Secondly, as we look at core values that already exist within your organization, how can we bring those back into the things that your employee base not only value, but will live on a daily basis? We can do that by ensuring that obviously our hiring measures are there and that all of the people we bring into the organization recognize those values and will begin to utilize them on a daily basis in the work in which they're doing. You should not intend to build upon certain lived values within a particular individual, within a candidate. Those values should already be a part of who they are. So how does an organization define those values? Well, there are several ways. Let's first examine the list or examine the people who you would love to clone in your organization. Secondly, we'll look to identify the characteristics that those people already embody. Third, we'll examine how to narrow down that list. And then fourth, we'll narrow down that list even more. But let's start at the top. Let's list the people that you would love to clone within your organization. These are the people who you already know embody the values of the organization, and in fact, embody a significant amount of other values that are not only great for your organization, but great for your external community and the individuals in which you're serving and the organizations you're serving. Secondly, as we look to identify the characteristics that those people embody, are they ones in which your organization will not only value today, but are they characteristics that your organization will be proud to say you're doing today, but also that you plan on doing tomorrow and will continue to do within the future? Third, narrow down that list. Your organization may come up with a host of values that are 40 or 50. Are those truly going to be ones in which, as you look to the future of your organization, that you can say that your organization truly has done? I'll offer up an example there. Diversity. It's a buzzword that we consistently hear within an organization's value matrix and within an organization's lived values. But is it truly something that your organization 10 years from now is going to say that you did well or that you continue to do on a daily basis? Narrow that list down and ensure that if diversity is going to be a part of one of your core values, that you truly have defined what that means for your organization and that you continue to narrow down that list even more, well past the initial core list that you came up with. In doing so,
add to that, Dante, I think this is a big pitfall we see often with companies when they say, talking about a role or their organization, how are we going to attract somebody to this role? And they start, tell us about your culture. And the words that get thrown in without a definition around it, and there's not an agreement with everybody coming on, with that same definition. So I'm not talking about dictionary definitions. It's what it means to you and the people in your organization, and you agreed upon that meaning. And so saying something, I think you used a great example there, diversity, meaning different things to different people. And somebody could say, yeah, we're really diverse in thought, okay? And somebody else says this organization is not diverse. You're like, well, what do you mean by that? And so there's some thoughts can go into that. Integrity, I think, is a classic one. I may say, okay, integrity is really important to us in our hiring, and somebody else might come and say, yes, I have integrity. So we bring somebody into our organization and random. Okay, so you got a salesperson in the organization, and say, great, I'm glad you have integrity. And for them, integrity is, I got to be me. I got to live to my own, the beat of my own drum and be who I'm meant to be. And for them, that allows them the license almost to go and launch their own competing business and take clients with them. Yeah, I'm just pulling a random one here. Something like that. You think, well, that's a complete lack of integrity. But for them, they're saying, no, I'm being me. I'm being who I'm supposed to be. And this is the true me living with integrity. as opposed to hiding behind something. I think, wow, that's a complete violation of our definition, which is to be ethically unwavering and inspiring trust. And so you have to define what you mean by that so that you can actually address it, not only in an interview or talk it through in an interview, but also in performance reviews and one-on-ones and quarterlies or whatever you have, to to say, how are you doing living these values? And so we wouldn't say, how are you doing on integrity? We say, how are you doing in inspiring trust in your work with your colleagues and clients alike? So really defining what you mean by that. Now you can actually have meaningful discussions, whether it be interviews or reviews, employee reviews, around those things with actual substance. So what's the point? Why do we measure the heart, Dante? Why do we measure these things?
So why measure the heart? It showcases, first and foremost, why a candidate is intrinsically motivated to make a move. Secondly, it demonstrates why a candidate would want to work for a particular organization. And finally, it also portrays the values the candidates will bring to an organization and demonstrates how these values align with company core values. And looking at the first aspect of why measuring the heart, is an individual intrinsically motivated to make a move? What makes your organization special that they will actually want to come and work for your company? Do you have a defined why? When you think about the documentation that you're providing to candidates, are you giving just a job description? Or are you actually providing them with tangible things that a candidate can go forth and think about their why of what they're doing within their career and how it aligns with your particular organization? As
Yeah.
we go ahead.
I kind of add to that, because I think you've got this whole dynamic here of this kind of the intrinsic motivation to make the move. You hear often like, well, how much is the pay? How much are they paying? What's the salary for this role? Is there a sign-on bonus? If that's the first question, it kind of gets into the why. They make their moves. How do they make the decision? It's compensation, potentially. But that's the first thing that came to mind for sure. And so really getting into why they make moves, would you be open to considering a move if it was truly superior to what you're doing right now, is a good question, because then superior, we get to find out what superior is and what they would define superior as. Like truly superior may be, I have more flexibility, so I can take my daughter to her sporting event. Like that may be a motivator, a big why for them, or the heart alignment, because it gives them the flexibility to do the things that are really deep down important to them. You may discover things of this why of the heart, and then to be able to measure that is really important. But we'll get to that in a bit. Keep going, Dante. This is good.
Absolutely. And in order to measure that, I mean, we really have to take a deeper dive into the why. It's even important to look at these sorts of things. The average turnover is 80% due to bad hiring decisions. Additionally, only about 55% of organizations or companies have a strategy to fix that problem. Just think about that. Over 80% are due to bad hiring decisions why an individual leaves an organization. Clearly, their why was not aligned. Clearly, the why of the organization wasn't aligned. So ensure that as you begin to roll these things out, that you're truly looking at all aspects of not only the candidate experience, but the experience that you're showcasing as your organization, in line with the why measure the heart, in line with the values of your organization. Our ultimate goal is to ensure that you find the right person going into the right seat for your organization. You don't want to have someone not feeling great about the decision to transition to your organization. And when you start to examine not only the briefcase and the head, but then also bring in the intrinsic motivators, such as the heart, you will certainly come out on the other end of having a better employee, one who truly values the work in which they're doing and truly values the thing that your organization brings to the fold within the community.
Yeah.
An engaged employee is certainly going to be a more productive employee for your organization.
I'd love to show all of the people watching right now our scorecard. So we have a scorecard for all of our own internal, but we also, for our clients, when we do hiring for them, any critical hiring, we have a scorecard for evaluating. We look at three components: the head, their behavior and cognitive, and we scorecard on a 1 through 5 scale for those areas. Then we do for the heart and also for the briefcase, the resume, professional choices. But the heart, we get into this value alignment and we say, okay, here are the critical values of your organizational culture. How do we define that? And we'll have multiple people score and rate the individuals based on value alignment. And if your values are not defined enough that you could actually rate them, I mean, you're not being able to assess it, and you're not being able to, you shouldn't be hiring on them. You shouldn't be hiring on your values if you can't actually score it or assess it. I understand there's some subjectivity from it, but you've got multiple people weighing in on that in the process and say, oh, that's interesting. So why did you value them a 2 and I valued them a 4? You know, and you have some discussion around this. Go, oh, because they demonstrated this in the interview, they said this, and I saw a history and a pattern of this. I think there's a good value alignment here. It just makes you actually going in eyes wide open and using data to make your hiring decision, but also data for your one-on-ones going forward, saying, hey, I think there's an area of growth here from a value alignment. And I think this is, you know, I'm seeing these things in you, but you violated some of your own personal values by doing that. You know, but actually having dialogue around something that's substantive really, really help when you start talking about hiring for culture. So our big 3 takeaways here. Your values need to be lived and defined and lived. You've got to actually put them in writing and bring some definition to it. Don't just say integrity. Don't just say passion. Don't just say, you know, servanthood. What does that really mean? And are we all agreeing on that definition? Not the definition in life, but the definition in your organization. And then the measuring values in your hiring process and during reviews. You gotta measure it. If culture is that important to you, don't let it be a thumbs up, thumbs down, fit, not fit. Measure those things. Talk about them often. Talk about them in your reviews. And then to engage and retain employees, you need to understand their why, their heart. Where do they see their future going and what's important to them, and make sure there's a good alignment there. I tell you, if there's a good value alignment from a personal heart and the why to the job and the expectation of the job and the behaviors, you get all of those things. You will get at least 10% discretionary effort above and beyond the job. You're going to have people willing to go above and beyond because everything's in alignment and there's a real sense of meaning, sense of utilization, sense of safety and security. All of those things come to play when people give discretionary effort or high level of engagement. I want to say a massive thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Dante as well. It's good to have you here with us. Oh gosh, I did it again. No time for these questions. And there's some good ones here. So what we're going to do is immediately after here, we're going to get some responses to some of these questions. That's some good ones. I know we've got a question here about if we can walk you through a specific role I see here, of how to actually figure out the value alignment and then in your organization. And so, but yeah, please do reach out to Dante if you have any questions as well for him. Thank you, Dante. Thank you for everyone who's on the line here right now. Please do go onto our website, looking under the training and development, education training development tab there, and you'll find a bunch of other things you can sign up for, different webinar series that we're doing. If you would love to have a demo of any of our services, you can get all of that information there. Thanks again for joining. Have a great rest of your day.